So welcome. Yigal Carmon, the founder and president of Memri, is a prominent authority on current developments in the Arab and Muslim world and on the
I asked not to exaggerate. She begins right away.
Okay, facts. Between 1988 and 1993, Mr. Carmon served as chief advisor on counter-terrorism to Israeli Prime Ministers Yitzhak Shamir and Yitzhak Rabin. In this capacity, he was chief coordinator of Israel's national counter-terrorist defense deployment, including cooperation with other governments. In the field of diplomacy and peace negotiations, he served on the delegation to the 1991 Madrid Peace Conference as the deputy head of the Israeli team negotiating with Syria and in the subsequent negotiations in Washington, D.C. Between 1983 and 1988, he was a senior staff member of Israel's National Defense College, where he taught courses on the Middle East and the Arab-Israeli conflict. Since 1998, when he founded Memri, Yigal Carmon has served as president of the Washington-based institute, which explores the Middle East through the media of the region. Memri bridges the language gap that exists between the West and the Middle East, providing timely translations of Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and Urdu and Pashto media.
Thank you.
Please welcome the speaker.
So our subject of today is the impact of the Arab Spring on Arab and Islamic anti-Semitism. To begin this presentation, we have first to define, or I would like to define anti-Semitism as we understand it at Memri, and to explain its limits according to our definition, and then move to its components and how were they impacted by the Arab Spring. So in our definition, as we work on it, anti-Semitism is only what the sentiments expressed against Jews, not against Israel. There is a perception that has its own justification, that singling out Israel of all nations in itself is already anti-Semitism. Maybe, maybe not. We do not regard that in our publications as anti-Semitism. It's bad enough as being anti-Israel, but this is not our subject. Anti-Semitism for us is what is against Jews in Montreal, in New Zealand, in Chile, and elsewhere, only not in Israel. There is an explanation for that, and I'll get to that later. So, of course, there is a connection between anti-Semitism and Israel and Zionism. There is a confusion made by many proponents of anti-Semitism in the Arab and Muslim world who like to present, particularly to the West, the whole thing as emerging from the conflict. But anti-Semitism was there much before the conflict between the Arabs and the Jews in Palestine. So this is not relevant to us. It heated the conflict in many ways, as I will explain later, but it was there long before. So what are the components of Arab anti-Semitism and Islamic anti-Semitism? There are basically four elements or four components. First component is anti-Semitism emanating from Islamic sources. And that is what used to be as clear from the Quran and other Islamic sources, the love-hate relations between Muhammad and the Jews. At the beginning, he tried to enroll them, to have them follow him, and there were many expressions of appreciation and even relations to the history as told or understood by the Jewish sources But then when they did not follow him, the relations soured in such a way that it ended up in the expulsion of the Jewish tribes from the Arabian Peninsula, some killed, some just expelled, some taken women and children as captives and so on. So this troubled relationship ended up, since the Jews did not follow him, ended up in an approach of absolute hate. The Jews are the killers of the prophets. Actually, they tried to kill Muhammad, and there are many stories and traditions, some Quranic, some traditions. So clearly, people who tried to kill the prophet and other prophets are evil. They even deserve an eternal curse, which is to be implemented over the years. كُتِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ الذَّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ. It was written on them misery and humiliation. And this, as you will see later, is something that history shows and that is ordained by divine will. Because of their misbehavior, because they deserve this punishment, and the motive of punishment arises again and again in every way. The Holocaust was a punishment. Everything is a punishment for their behavior, everything that happened to them. And then, of course, they are the descendants of pigs and apes. This is, by the way, lately we will show a video of that. The people of the Saturday, namely the Jews, in 3 verses in the Quran are described as people who, again, were punished. Why were they punished to become pigs and apes? Because they circumvented Allah's orders. Allah said you should not work on Saturday. The Jews of Ayla, which is Eilat, happens to be, circumvented it. They dug a kind of a tunnel between the sea and a hole that they did, and the fish, they did it prior to Saturday. The fish went into the tunnel, got trapped in wherever they were tied, and on Sunday they were used. But this is circumventing what Allah wanted. So they should be punished, and they were turned into pigs and apes. By the way, later on it was many other animals, lizards and other. I would mention all the time that in many instances you should go to our website and find there is a very elaborate research that we did on this. Jews are descendants of pigs and apes and other animals, and you will see there all the sources and what relates to them. And then there is the element of punishment goes back to the fact that there is the promise of the stone and the tree, that at the end of the day, the Muslims will fight the Jews, and the Jews will hide behind the tree and the stone, and the tree and the stone will call upon the Muslim, O Abdullah, servant of Allah, a Jew is behind me, come and kill him. Now this, that sounds very, in its details is very strange, is in fact a very symbolic thing. What it says is that the Jews are so evil that nature itself comes against them. This is what it means. It's not about stone or tree. It's that not just the Muslims are fighting them. Nature fights them because they cannot, except for one tree, that is the Rarkad tree, that will protect them, they would hide there. And some sheikhs, this is really funny, in various places in the Muslim world, say, indeed, if you look on Google Earth, you will find that the Jews are planting the rarkad tree. By the way, no one knows what is the rarkad tree, but it's a tree that is not botanically known. But this is, they are planting it, of course, because they know what will come at them at the end of days. And we did a video clip that brings the different elements of this tradition as told by different sheikhs all over. And at the end we finish with a picture of a tree, a family tree. A whole family can hide behind one. But okay, this is a way to overcome our feelings, but this is to laugh, but this is a very serious thing. It's about nature joining in rejecting the Jews as evil. So these are basically the Islamic sources. The second element are the Western sources. And that is mostly the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, this book that was forged by the Okhrana, the secret police of the Russian secret police in the time of the Tsar. And what it shows in some vague reference to the Rothschild family, it shows how the rich Jews together with rabbis are planning how to take control of the world. And you see the elderly Nathan or Anshel Rothschild and his deathbed dividing to his son, you take France, you take England, you take the Vatican, you take this, you take that, to control the world. Another element, Western, is the blood libel. The blood libel, namely, the Jews are using the blood of young non-Muslims, mostly Christian, because this was the story, but also others, to use it for their Passover matzah. This is something that began in the West and, of course, was transferred to the Arab world. And imagine no other than the most rejectful regimes to Western culture endorsed it totally, the Saudis and the Iranians, also others. But both these regimes that are generally claiming to have a culture and civilization of their own just swallowed this Western thing into their own mythology. And sometimes in a total mix, there are sometimes, usually it's for Passover, but there are also some who say it's for Purim, and which is another Jewish holiday. And there are different descriptions of how this blood is taken, that you take a boy, less than 10, in a barrel that has needles, and he is squeezed between the needles, and the blood that comes out is, of course, purer and more usable, like extraction of good stuff for the cakes or the bread. The third element is the Holocaust. On the one hand, it's denial, but on the other hand, and this is a new phenomenon, it's confirmation, praise, and the call for another round. But this time at the hands of the believers, namely the Muslims. This is done by very prominent leaders, spiritual leaders, and also at the popular level, as we will show later on, the a TV channel in Egypt that shows the actual footage of the Holocaust, the most horrific pictures of the past with the bodies. Again, praise to Allah, as he said, it was written upon them humiliation and misery, and here is the proof. And sometimes when you hear the speaker, you think he has some empathy. You lose it because he explains it as a punishment and that how miserable they are. And then comes the striking sentence, and next time, God willing, at the hands of the believers. And even in the level of a football popular game, imagine what it takes. In Egypt, you will see a whole poster, what do you call it, a sign that stretches on several tribunes. Imagine what organization this needs, with the writing, "One nation for a new Holocaust." Just the organization of it. Imagine a football stadium, and it goes for like 3-4 tribunes holding it. The fourth element is the demonization, general demonization. This is really funny for those who need this some way to be relaxed over this hate, because almost everything that happens in this world, every catastrophe, everything was done by the Jews. I'll give some examples later, and I know that you will laugh, and that's okay if it makes it easier. But you should always remember that there are people who take it seriously. So before we go to the examples, there are some questions to be asked. One, is there a difference between Sunni anti-Semitism and Shiite? And the answer is simple, no. Where does it come from? People are not born anti-Semites. I guess this is clear to all of us. They get it. And it comes from education systems, from the mosque, from the media. Which is full of it. Are there people, and this is the most important question, are there people who oppose it? And the very encouraging answer is yes, there are, and I could say even growing numbers. And if we don't hear all of them, this is because we don't hear much about the Middle East that is original from sources. This is why Memri exists, but yes, there are. And we'll give one example, which is fantastic. Yesterday, I'm used to that. When we showed it in the presentation that I did yesterday, people at the end clapped. Because a great guy, no question, a great guy. The way he deals with this, and just incredible to those who don't know, but you should know there are many. We have an event every year on Capitol Hill in which we at the speaker's dining room with all the relevant dignitaries that are interested in the subject. And in every year we have Muslim, Arab or non-Arab, who speaks out against this deplorable phenomenon. And this is just a small number, there are many. So now we are going to move to examples, some on the video, some here. I hope everybody knows that you came here for 3 hours. And if not, I'll keep talking. Whoever leaves, leaves. Did something happen with the Arab Spring? Or how did it impact this phenomenon? And I must state that the general amount of material has lessened. It is understandable. They are busy with themselves. There is no more time for other issues. Moreover, they know that it's not the Jews who are killing them. It's Assad, it's Saleh, it's Gaddafi. You cannot tell them any more lies and fabrications. They know who is shooting at them. They know who is killing them. So it doesn't work anymore to say the Jews, the Americans, the Israelis. They know that this is meaningless. So, and moreover, the education systems of the governments that were behind this phenomenon for decades, century, don't work anymore. It's all in disarray. So it's less, inevitably it's less. On the other hand, there is another phenomenon, that there is freedom of the media in a way that hasn't happened in the past. So with the internet, there is also room for everyone to express his anti-Semitic feelings. So the fact that is less, that expressions are less, is even more indicative that with all this freedom on the internet, there isn't as much as was before. Now I need to reserve what I said, and that is the following. It is not that the sentiments disappeared. The sentiments are there. Take Europe. I mean, Europe has had its spring ages and decades, and is then Europe free of anti-Semitism? Not really. Here the spring is only beginning, so of course the sentiments are there. Their expression has lessened because of the reasons I mentioned. But it comes out. I would apologize to those who heard me yesterday with 2 examples, but then we'll have many others. One, there was a poll that said that Israelis, I don't think this poll was true or what, but doesn't matter. It was out there that the Israelis support Assad. So someone of the rebels writes, of course they support Assad because he spills our blood and they need our blood for Passover. So yes, why wouldn't they support Assad? Or another case, which is quite known, this Libyan lady, Iman al-Awadi, who you may have seen her on TV, a young woman, human rights fighter in Libya, that did this crazy thing to go to the hotel in Tripoli where journalists were and to talk to them. And she was immediately taken violently by the thugs of Gaddafi. He was still there, and beaten on camera and raped and put in jail. And then she was released, or better said, thrown out. And CNN had report about her, and they had her mother in Benghazi with a cell phone, and she was in Tripoli with another cell phone that they gave her. And the conversation, a very emotional one, was on live, and there was a lot of crying in this conversation. And then the mother tells the daughter, "My daughter, you should go to the Tunisian border, cross it. They allow people to cross from Libya. Go, leave this country, go." And this girl, who is the best that you can expect of new rebels that fight for human rights, and this is again from bitterness and from stereotypes that exist and cannot be removed. She says to her mother, "Why should I go? I don't want to go. I don't want to leave my country. Let him go. Gaddafi, that Jew." So now, and this was not translated by the CNN, that Jew. So maybe we should talk about anti-Semitism and somewhere else. But this is a miss, an intentional miss for sure. There are other examples, like what I mentioned, a whole nation for a new Holocaust, which you will see. Actually, Elliot, let's begin showing it. This was after the revolution in Egypt. And President Morsi, with a statement about the apes and pigs, this was before the revolution, but when he had to talk about it after it was exposed, he couldn't say anything. Clearly, he cannot say anything meaningful because this is Quran. What can he say? Condemn it? It's inconceivable. He cannot condemn such a thing. So it's there by the fact that he said everything taken out of context, and this, that. Well, you know, it's the origins. So let's just see this, and we'll move to other examples. Yeah. Imagine 3-4 tribunes for sure. Okay. So I would begin with the toughest of all, which is the Holocaust approval, and the call for another one. We have many examples, so we will do it very short, so that we don't finish with that because it's really tough. We'll begin with the first is Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, Dr. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, one of the leaders of Sunni Islam, leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, and spiritual leader for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And he explains what happened to the Jews, why did it happen, and how they deserve it.
ما فعل بهم وكان مبالغ في الامر ما بلغوا، ولكن استطاع ان يعني يوقفهم عند حدودهم، وكان هذا ادبا الهيا، تاديبا الهيا، عقابا قدريا لهؤلاء. والمره القادمه ان شاء الله ستكون على ايدي المؤمنين.
Now the TV channel in Egypt that shows the Holocaust and has the same ending. But you will see in the description the motifs of the punishment, the misery, the humiliation. Misery, humiliation. That is what was written on them, ordained on them by divine will of Allah. And this is really happening. it's kind of a proof actually, and praise to Allah, whatever He said is happening.
ايه اللي عملوا فيهم الشعب الالماني او الجيش الالماني؟ دي طبعا جزء من تفسير اليهود الالماني. الالمان اكتشفوا خيانات اليهود وحربهم ضدهم وافسادهم في بلادهم. تعالوا بقى نشوف ازاي الظلمه يبتلوا بمن يظلمهم. دول دي المقابر الالمانيه، لكن تعالوا نشوف الالمان هيعملوا ايه في اليهود. دي اجسام بني ادمين ميته وعظام يهود مدمره، وده كله كان اليهود بيتشووا جواه، واليهودي بيحضروهم للحرب. شو ادي يهود بيموتوا من الجوع او بيموتوا من الغاز، وبيجمعوهم في عربيات. شوفوا الذل على وجهه ازاي، سبحان الله العظيم. ضربت عليهم الذله والمسكنه وباءوا بغضب الله. شوفوا الجوع اللي سلطوه عليهم، شوفوا الذل، وادي الذل بيدفنوا احياء. هذا انسان اهو بيوضع في حفره عشان يدفن حيا، وادي اجسام متراكمه على بعضها جزاء وفاقا. وصدق ابن مسعود لما قال شوفوا ادي سلك بتسحق بيه اجسامهم، شوفوا ده بيتربط هو وخمسه معاه بجنازير هيشنقوا بجنزير واحد. ركزوا يا اخواني، شوفوا ادي بيزنقوا بجنزير، شوفوا ادي رؤوس خمس رؤوس مع بعضهم، وادي اجسام، وده بيسقط ظهره بمسمار، وده طفل بيستنى يسقط. بس شوفوا الذل اللي عليهم، اجسام عماله، سبحان الله العظيم. هم ظلم يقولوا بالجبر. صدق ابن مسعود حين قال ما من ظالم الا ويبتلى بمن يظلمه. ادي اجسام وادي قتل وادي جماجم وادي اجسام اليهود تشحن اقل مما تشحن البهائم والحيوانات. شوفوا الجرافه بتاخد اجسام اليهود وادي المشردين المنتظرين القتل. شوفوا الجندي الالماني هيجي دلوقتي، شوفوا امراه يهوديه هتقبل ايده. شوفوا الذل من الخوف والرعب اللي اصابها بالقتل. شوفوا قد ايه ادي اليهوديه تقبل. شوفوا الذل، هو ده اللي احنا منتظرينه يحصل، لكن ان شاء الله على ايدي المسلمين باذن الله.
And the music always. No denial, everything there, absolute confirmation. But there are others who still deny. We take the Iranian French co-production with Dieudonné, the comedian turned into political comedian that produced with Iran a movie called The Anti-Semite, straightforward, no, and mocking what for them is the myth of the Holocaust. Again, the music is so nice.
Entassés dans cet endroit réduit pour y être asphyxiés.
corps étaient transportés au crématorium central jusqu'à des crématoriums de fortune comme celui-ci qui servaient à incinérer des nourrissons. D'autres corps étaient dépecés et les ponts utilisés pour faire de confortables fauteuils en cuivre. Ou bien encore de luxueux abat-jours particulièrement prisés par la bourgeoisie nazie. Malgré cet amoncellement de preuves irréfutables, il s'en trouvera encore pour nier la Shoah.
Now, another production, totally Iranian, is reminding very much the Stürmer, the German cartoonist who described the Jews, as you will see in the publication in this magazine. And again, it's how the Jews invented and exploited the Holocaust. This won a prize in a cartoon contest in Iran. This piano sounds to me some Jewish lyric. So there is this description of the Shoah as a way to exploit, to get money. There is also the denial of the numbers. And in this, we have no less big figures than Qaradawi, the head of the PA, a generally speaking, relatively moderate person, Abu Mazen, who had his PhD in Russia, in the University of Moscow. I guess not written by him. It's in Russian. We have a copy of it. But he doesn't know Russian, so how come? But there is a signature there. By the way, in this PhD, there is no denial of the Holocaust. And it's understandable because the Russians, the Soviets at the time when he was doing his PhD in whatever way, unknown to McGill, he did not, the Russians, the Soviets did not deny the Holocaust. To the contrary, they were proud of liberating Auschwitz and fighting the Nazis. But Abu Mazen wrote a book on the basis of this PhD. And in this book, he added an introduction. And in this introduction, there is this regular trick that says the numbers are exaggerated. He quotes Raoul Hilberg with a number of page where he says that Raoul Hilberg said that the number, I hope if you don't know, he's one of the researchers of the Holocaust and one who dealt with the numbers. And he says, Raoul Hilberg says it was 800,964. And you go to the book by Raoul Hilberg, The Destruction of European Jewry, and there is no such thing. So that's a totally made up thing to claim that this is exaggerated for whatever, and it's academic work. The problem with this book, or the PhD also, and that is absolutely Soviet message, is the description. The whole book is about what he calls the collaboration of the Jews with the Nazis. This is an element that appears in many other anti-Semitic to our description messages. And what is this collaboration? It is about what is known as the Ha'avara Agreement. In 1935, the Zionist movement in Germany made an agreement with the Nazi authorities at the time. It was a rescue agreement of a community that knew it's going to be finished, and it was an arrangement by which they give their properties in an organized way, and they are let go to Palestine of the time. This rescue agreement of people on the edge of extinction is described as the collaboration of Jews and Nazis, Zionists and Nazis. This is an absolute Soviet message, and this is what is the big story in his book. And in addition, this stupid thing about quoting Hilberg, saying it's just less than 1 million. But we are talking about a very prominent figure, and not one that is Iranian extremist or what. Is in the same way that Karadawi is not a regular, what you would call jihadi person, is Muslim Brotherhood. So this is the message. Of course, emanating from this is the rejection to teach the Holocaust, where curricula that UNRWA, the United Nations Agency for Relief and Work, tried to do, and it was just rejected and couldn't be implemented. So let's move to something more in a funny way. There is this joke. We need jokes for this kind of material about a Jew who reads anti-Semitic stuff. So his friend asked him, "Why are you reading that?" And he says, "What do you mean? It says that we are so powerful, we are so great, we are ruling the world, we are doing this. It gives me a good feeling." Okay, not too much to laugh. No, let's move to the Islamic sources first. So, with the Islamic sources, let's see first Morsi, president of Egypt, with the apes and pigs. I did not bring an animation by the Iranians, but it's all over. It is not a Shiite thing. An animation for kids that describes it as a movie for kids, how they do what they did and they come to, some other come to see them, and suddenly they see them turning into apes and pigs, and the people in animation become apes and pigs. Very funny. So let's see Morsi, just for a little bit, and then we move to others.
هذه المفاوضات العبثية إضاعة الوقت وتضييع الفرص. الصهاينة يكتسبون وقتا ويأخذون فرصا، والفلسطينيون عربا ومسلمين تضيع عليهم الفرص تضيع عليهم أوقاتهم ولا يأخذون شيئا. هكذا نرى كيف تبدد هذا الحلم الذي كان دائما سرابا، وظنه البعض من الفلسطينيين من الذين يتصورون خطأ أن أعداءهم يمكن أن يعطونهم شيئا. هذه السلطة التي ما جاء بها الأعداء الصهاينة والأمريكان إلا لتكون على عكس وضد إرادة الشعب الفلسطيني وضد مصالح الفلسطينيين. لا يمكن أن يتوقع عاقل أن يحدث شيء في هذا المسار، إما الصهاينة وما يريدون وإما الحرب. هذا ما يعرفه هؤلاء المحتلين لأرض فلسطين المعتدين على الفلسطينيين، هؤلاء مصاصي الدماء مشعلي الحروب أحفاد القردة والخنازير. يجب أن نقاومهم بكل وسائل المقاومة، مقاومة في فلسطين، مقاومة.
Okay, here is an example of how the conflict creeps into his message, but then you have to fight them everywhere. I don't know why it was cut in Palestine, but everywhere in the world. And he did not need to go back. If he had talked about the conflict, about Palestine, about what the Jews, the Zionists, not Jews, are doing, fine. Why go back to the apes and pigs? Why? What is this part of? Well, it's part of because they are Jews. And then comes, and it has to be fought in Palestine and in the whole world. And this is what the Saudi Sheikh says, jihad against the cursed Jews everywhere is a supreme duty. The element of the fact that they were cursed, it's binding on the believer. It's not just a descriptive thing, okay, they were cursed and Allah will take care of it. No, this is a duty of the believer to do that, to implement that which Allah has ordained. And it's not to happen just by Allah's will in a way that humans, believers, are not part of it. Iranian series talks about, and this is, by the way, from printed material, what I'm reading to you. Of course, I urge you to go back to memri.org and to just click. You have it's the Lantos archives on anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, all in one place. You don't need to do any search. You just go to the Lantos archives, everything is there. So they talk about what the Prophet did to the Jews and to the Jewish tribes in Saudi Arabia. In the Arab Peninsula. And why he did it? Because of what they did. Because they conspired to kill him. Because they aligned with his enemies. Because they fought Islam from the first moment that Islam rose to humanity. And the actual conclusion is it is still possible to do to the Jews what was done to the Jews in Khaybar. This is the usual slogan that is read, Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud, Jaish Muhammad, Sawfa Yaud. Khaybar, O Jews, remember Khaybar, the army of Muhammad will come back. more apes and pigs. In Pakistan, I mean, there are no Jews, but this doesn't mean anything. You don't need Jews to be anti-Semites. You just have to have the notion of Jews. And the Jewish race would have become extinct, but Allah had to keep this symbol of the slayers of the Prophet, of ingratitude, of humiliation, and of misery as a lesson till the end of days. This is something that there is work to be done to make it happen. It's not happening out of itself. A sheikh in Tunisia after the revolution, Sheikh Ahmad al-Suhaili, goes with the same elements of the Quran, of the evil Jews that have to be destroyed. By the way, in many, many prayers and sermons, there is the end of the prayer with supplication. Allah, deal with the Jews, dry the blood in their veins, make their wives widows, do this, do this. This is supplication of the end of prayer. That is, make Allah make the wombs of their women barren and dry up the loins of their men. New concept. And then it was exposed, and he had to back down. So here is what he said, and some of us should be happy. I did not call to kill them all. I meant a sect amongst them. Okay. We just have to be among the lucky ones, and everything will be fine. Having said that, I want to remind us all that some Jewish activists in Tunisia went to see what happened to the synagogue in Djerba, and he was attacked, and they didn't let him do what he wanted to rehabilitate the synagogue that was destroyed, like other things, not particularly. And the government, and it doesn't matter for what reasons, the fact is that the government stopped those who attacked him and allowed the renovation of the synagogue. So this is also to be remembered. Now we move to the Western sources, and as I said, we have those two. By the way, what I brought here is last 4 months, and I say about that that the material is less and less. So now guess what was before. It was really big. So we have the protocols, and this is not just when Pesach comes, but all the year. And both Shiites and Sunnis, and it's, what can I tell you? It's 9 pages of series in the Iranian media on this element. With stories, we have this is new, and I wanted to bring new stuff after, even though in Iran there was no revolution, it was 3 years ago or more, but after the Arab Spring Revolution, and it's no different in the Arab world, and it's an unending series of the blood libel with stories that you don't know where they come from. Historians on TV, people with PhDs sitting in a studio, like scientists talking, historians talking in an environment of, and one talks about some 150 kids that were kidnapped in France, and their blood was taken, but the Jews managed to silence the French authorities, so it didn't come out. And in Britain, and the same, like they don't only do that, they control the media. So of course they can silence any criticism of that. In Jordan, you find many who relate to the protocols, not clear why, wherever the inner struggle is high, there are people who heighten the tension. In every paper piece I put aside as an article, I'm looking for the proof. And the proof is, as a Saudi researcher says, the protocols are being implemented today. You don't need to prove that the book was forged or not. Even if it was forged, the proof is in the pudding. It is, look at what is happening, and you know that the protocols are true. Look at the world controlled by Jews, and you know that this is true. It is about the control of the world. It's the trying to look for world domination and using every element in their way. So there is a list. Destroying the values and rule societies, replacing the values with the rule of the state. Limiting the control of the state in favor, it's contradictory, of control of the UN. Subjecting the UN to the control of the Jews. Spreading the culture of equality between sexes, legitimizing relations between women and men other than their husbands, so that the men lose their hold over their families, banish their wives. Okay, destroying marital values and the family relations, and legitimizing prostitution. Much of it is from the Nazi propaganda about the way the Jews corrupt society. Humiliating and degrading religious clerics, prohibiting corporal punishment. How does that relate? Stripping tribal leaders of all material and moral authority, rejecting traditional customs, eradicating from people consciousness and instructive stories and parables of their ancient heritage, rewriting history. At the end, it gets to taking over Greece by Jewish bankers. The whole crisis, as a current example, the whole crisis in Greece was done by the Jews so they can buy and cheap all the companies, all the institutions, and take control of it. We move to demonization. Who did Sandy Hook? You know. We can say it in, yeah, but also other examples. All porno movies, who is behind them? Who is the porn in the industry? We talked about that, the Jews. In the past, we had the tsunami, which was created by the continent plates coming. This is, of course, the Jews. Jews are a disease that spreads throughout the world. Virus and so on. The Jews helped Hitler with the gas chambers, killed the ambassador to Libya. This is endless. I mean, this is, the Jews are behind Myanmar persecution of Muslims. They are connected to the Buddhists, and they are behind the Myanmar persecution. Okay, it's time for us to see an example of a courageous young researcher in Egypt, Dr. Said Kasha. He is in a very prestigious research center in Egypt, the Al-Aram Center for Strategic Studies, very reputable as a national center from the time of Gamal Abdel Nasser. And he's invited to talk about the Holocaust in a program where the program has done already the research. Now we are going to skip all this part because it's a confused, totally baseless description of how happened, what happened, that the Jews managed to get close to Hitler to talk him into invading Russia and get stuck there. Like it was known that this is what happened, even though he saw them as enemies, so how does it work? Doesn't matter. The Jews have done this. The main debate is about the number, and the lady who did the research for the program, she's the anchor, she said it's 30,000, and there are versions 150,000, and the Jews, she says, say it's 3 million, and on, endless. We will move right to the beginning of the talk with him. She wouldn't let him speak, basically. He has to fight for the opportunity to speak. And at the end, he tells her everything, not only about this Holocaust research that she did, but also about other things which he raises out of his initiative, the protocols, and then the story of World War II, and then he goes to the Sabra and Shatila, who did it because it's Jews, forget Israel, Jews, as would come out. He relates on his initiative to every myth and fights it. Now imagine that this guy has to go the next day to his office in the Laram Center and meet his colleagues, and they would tell him, what the hell are you talking there? What is it? And this is the discourse. This is, it will look to you strange. This is what he has to fight. It's not just on this program, it's everywhere. So we'll see this guy. Great guy.
رأيك كم عدد اليهود الذين تم حربهم في أوروبا؟
والله شوف أنا عندي يعني تحفظ على مسألة إصابة الموضوع ده. يعني أنا مش عارف العربي مهتم قوي بإنه يعرف كم عدد ضحايا المحرقة.
يمكن العالم العربي مهتم بسبب الادعاءات الكاذبة يعني بيطلقها اليهود على هذا الموضوع.
يعني هل لو كانوا النازيين قتلوا زي ما الرقم هنا بيقول 30,000 بمجرد انهم يهوديين جريمه بحق الانسانيه. كون تقتل حد بناء على انه بيعتقد اعتقاد ديني مخالف ليكي دي جريمه ضد الانسانيه.
طيب خلينا نعرف الرقم.
اكمل بس الرقم حضرتك بتسالي على الرقم.
هذا الرقم مهم لنا لانه اليهود بيقولوا تقريبا 3 ملايين.
لا اليهود بيقولوا 6 ما بيقولوش 3. هناك قالوا في مغالطات كثيره جدا. اليهود بيقولوا 6 ما بيقولوش 3 ملايين.
لا انا شفتها اول مره اسمع هذا
الرقم المتداول
لانه احنا من دراساتنا ومن كل
لا في كل الادوات حتى يعني معسكر اوشفايتس بس لوحده كانوا فتره دي فيها 4 مليون.
طيب خلينا احنا لا نكمل. لا انت قلت شيء مهم دلوقتي حاليا. انت قلت انه احنا بناء على كل الدراسات اللي عندنا كل المعلومات الموثقه اللي عندنا انه اليهود بيقولوا انه هم 3 ملايين واحنا ذكرنا 3 ارقام. احنا قلنا 3 ملايين وانه قلنا 150,000 وقلنا 30,000.
هو التأمين استند ايه؟ انا مش عارف الرقم 3 مليون.
طيب احنا معنا اتصال وبنرجع لك.
30,000 ده موجودين انا برضه مش عارف.
وانت منين جبت
لا الموقع الاسرائيلي بتقول كده.
احنا مواقع برضه
يعني هل الموقع الاسرائيلي بيقول نفس الكلام؟
معلش احنا موقع قناه الفراعين بتقول هذا الشيء.
في مغالطه كبيره جدا في الرقم بتاع الضحايا لهذه المذبحه.
يا عمي الله يرضى عليك انت بتقول في مبالغه ب 3 ملايين ولا 150 ولا 30,000 والاستاذ سعيد معانا بيقول لا انتوا ارقامكم غلط ده هي 6 مليون.
6 مليون يعني وفيها موجود 6 مليون ضحيه في المذبحه. في وقت كان في اصلا كل اليهود في العالم لا تعدي 2 مليون مثلا تقريبا.
نعم.
منين حضرتك الرقم ده كمان؟
قبل ايام قليله كانت ذكرى الهولوكوست واليهود بيحاولوا قدر الامكان انه هم يعني بيستغلوا هذه المحرقة وبيستغلوا هذه الواقعة بأنه هم بيستدروا عطف العالم بأنه هم شعب مظلوم، بأنه يا جماعة أنه إحنا ناس تعرضنا لمحرقة كبيرة فإحنا حابين أنه إحنا
يا استاذ احمد عايز اقول لك بس حاجه
بس لو سمحت يا أستاذ سعيد أنا بتكلم مع الأستاذ أحمد لو سمحت انه احنا بنحاول انه بنركز مثل ما قلت لك على اليهود، انه اليهود ليه احنا بنركز عليهم بهذا الشيء؟ لانه اليهود بيستغلوا هذه المحرقه بان هم بيدوا اعداء. هي بالتاكيد غير صحيحه مهما كان الرقم، لكن هي غير صحيحه لانه اكيد اكثر بكثير من اللي فعلا هو تم ابادتهم. فاحنا عايزين نحط المواضيع والامور في حجمها الطبيعي.
كان هتلر بالفعل يرتكب جريمه ضد الانسانيه باستهدافه لعدد كبير من الناس ومنها اليهود، يعني هو طبعا كان غرض الاسلام والمعاقين.
هو فعلا احنا على فكره
لكن عايزين نركز على
التقرير انت كمان
انا اكمل كلامي، انا بتكلم انا مش عارف اكمل اللي انا عايز اقوله، مش عارف اكمل اللي انا عايز اقوله، اكمل اللي انا عايز اقوله.
مش يا استاذ سعيد احنا مش ضيف هدي اعصابك شويه حضرتك. لا
انا مش عارف اكمل اللي انا عايز
تشرب مي تشرب مي شويه يعني اسمح لي
انا اصلا مسألين سؤال مش عايز اسمع الاجابه. انا مش فاهم انا طب انا جايبني عشان تقولوا كلامكم ولا اقول كلامي؟ انا مش فاهم. انا مش هخش معاك جدل المحرقه حصلت ولا ما حصلتش 6 مليون ولا 30,000، دي مش قضيه، دي قضيه خسرانه اساسا. والاخطر منها انها لا تستند الى معلومات، يعني كل اللي جه في التغيير لا يستند مين الارشيف اللي قال مين الوثيقه اللي قالت له كده؟ يعني ايه الوثائق اللي تحت ايد اللي كتب التقرير بتقول له دول 30,000؟
هو انا بقول اللي تحت ايد
انا بقول الارشيف السوفيتي نفسه والارشيف الالماني نفسه والارشيف الانجليزي موجودين، الباحثين والمؤرخين بيستخدموا وثائق، ما بيجيبوش منه ارقام كده على عوامل، بيجيب ارقام. انا ما كنتش عارف قوي يعني في ناس
والله متاكد استاذ سعيد
انا قلت
متاكد بس احنا كمان عندنا وثائق قلنا من خلال الارقام.
ركز قوي على فكره المؤامره اليهوديه واستخدم حاجات اصبحت محسومه، يعني كلام عن البروتوكولات وكان محسومين.
نعم.
هذه وثيقه مزوره.
سببها احنا المنظمات اليهوديه يعني
لا دي وثيقه مزوره، دي مزوره بجد
علينا قبل يعني الله يخليك. بس خلينا اتركنا من موضوع بروتوكولات حكماء صهيون، ابوس اذا خلينا بعيد عن هذا الموضوع لانه احنا هذا الموضوع مسبب لنا ازمه كبيره ولانه هذا الموضوع يعني اليهود بيتهمونا بانه احنا ننظر الاسلاميه بسبب انه احنا ناقشنا هذه البروتوكولات واحنا اساسا داخلين مبدئيا يعني دخلنا برجلنا على طيب خليني اكمل انه احنا بسبب هذه البروتوكولات انه احنا داخلين على قضيه مع المنظمات اليهوديه بسبب انه احنا ناقشنا والتقرير بالضبط.
طيب ده لازم تاخدوا بالكم بقى فعلا
يعني هو التقرير قال انه احنا مستعدين انه احنا بنكشف الحقائق ولكن خلي هؤلاء الناس تيجي تقعد معنا.
مين اللي يقعد معنا؟
كلامنا واضح.
بصي النهارده
يعني
مفيش
استاذ
باحث،
الله يخليك احنا كلامنا واضح بلاش انه احنا بنخرج من الموضوع يعني.
مفيش باحث من نقد بروتوكولات حكماء صهيون في وثيقه مزوره عملتها المخابرات الروسيه علشان بتنتقل لليهود لاسباب عنصريه ومعاديه للساميه بجد.
هذا راي حضرتك. هذا راي حضرتك.
مش رايي
يعني
اصلا انتوا مين اللي يقدر يثبت البروتوكولات دي حقيقيه؟ مين اللي يقدر يثبت الكلام ده؟ يعني ده كتاب متداول في السوق. لكن
طيب يعني هو مبدئيا يا استاذ العزيز يعني هذا رايك يعني بس يعني اذا كان هذا يعني ليه الروس ما عملوش محرقه لليهود؟
وحتى في التقرير كان بيقول ان هم اقنعوه بانه يقوم بغزو روسيا. هو ما اقنعوش بغزو روسيا، الراجل اساسا من البدايه كان عنده مخطط كبير جدا الى انه يستولي على اوروبا، مش يستولي على اوروبا.
لا هذه ما كانت النقطه الوحيده حضرتك اللي اتكلمنا فيها في التقرير.
هو سهل جدا ان انا اقول اليهود بيتامروا، ايه دليل المؤامره دي؟
طب ما هذا كلام هتلر، احنا بنعرف انه هذا كلام هتلر، احنا عارفين انه هذا كلام
لسنوات طويله فضلت بروتوكولات القدس فكره اسطوره فطيره الدم ان اليهود بيعملوا فطيره من دم المسيحيين او من دم المسلمين. دي اساطير كانت موجوده لكنها ما كانتش حقيقيه.
نعم.
بالبحث بقى العلمي والتاريخي دي كان كله اساطير.
نعم.
ممكن ان احنا نعمل اسطوره علشان ندين شعب ما او دين جماعه ما. زي ما هم طلعوا علينا اسطوره، هو فكره اسرائيل ما بتطلعش فكره العرب اساطير، هم قالوا ان احنا
ازاي مش فكره؟ امال احنا عاملين البرنامج ده ليه؟
طيب
عاملين ليه احنا عاملينه عشان كده.
هم لما كانوا بيقولوا ان احنا العرب بيقولوا عايزين يرموا اليهود في البحر، لم يثبت على الاطلاق ان في اي زعيم عربي قال هذا الكلام، ما حصلش.
عبد الناصر قال هذا الكلام يا استاذ سعيد.
راس الدم
عبد الناصر قال نصا يا استاذ سعيد سألقي بإسرائيل فينا. والله يا استاذ سعيد ان شاء الله ان شاء الله مني الك هديه، مني الك راح اجيب لك خطبه الزعيم الراحل عبد الناصر اللي قال بيها هذه الجمله.
يعني اسرائيل هم اللي بيراودوا عنا هذا الكلام.
وعلى فكره هو قال كمان يعني تكمل هذه الجمله، قال اسرائيل ومن وراءها.
يعني لم يقل هذا.
وقال كمان انه اسرائيل هي الولايه الثانيه والخمسين.
بصي كل يوم الولايه 52 غير لما يقول هرمي اليهود في البحر. يعني يثبت ان اي زعيم عربي لا عبد الناصر ولا غيره اي حد بالعكس الاسرائيلي.
استاذ سعيد يعني انا بقول لك تشجيع عشان حتى لا نختلف كثير في مقولات عبد الناصر. انا عراقيه.
ما انا عارف ان
انا عراقيه.
عارف ان انا عارف
اوكي فكانوا بيحفظونا نصا.
هذا
يعني خطب رئيس الراحل
هذا سنة كام هذا الكلام؟ هذا سنة كام؟ عبد الناصر.
شوف انا هذا الخطاب قاله في 67 تقريبا.
اسرائيل بتشيع هذا الكلام علشان تكسب بيه تعارف. انا اتبنيت اسطوره.
انا بقول لك عراقيه، انا بقول لك عراقيه، هذا انا درسته ببغداد. يعني اسرائيل ما دام انتهى راح ياخذ منها شيء حتى يدرس لنا اياه.
يعني صدق ما كانش عارف حاجه يعني. الراجل كان غلبان على قلبه يعني. كان بيقول كلام يستهدف وخلاص، لكن هو ما فيش لغه استخدم فيها هذا التعبير خالص
هذا ايضا رايي.
بغض النظر المشكله الكبيره عند العرب انهم بيصوروا اليهود على انهم عبقرة. يعني كانهم بيدعموا الاسطوره بتاعت انهم شعب غير محترم. اليهود ما همش بالعبقريه الضخمه دي اللي تخليهم يدخلوا العالم ويتآمروا ضد الكل وينجحوا في مؤامراتهم. اليهود ناس زي اي ناس عاديين جدا. كل اللي احنا بنقوله اصلي بيتآمر وبينجح طول الوقت في انه يعمل اللي هو عايزه. ده معناه انه عبقري واحنا اغبياء. يعني ببساطه للاسف الشديد لدى العقل العربي اتجاه غريب جدا، هو ان جعل اليهود كانهم يديرون العالم. هذا غير صحيح. هم ناس بيشتغلوا وبيجيبوا في بعض المجالات، ده صحيح. ما نقدرش ننكر انه عدد من افضل العقليات العلميه التي كتبتها الانسانيه كانوا من اليهود. العرب دائما ما يقولون كلام ما فيش عليه اي دليل. يعني انا سمعت ناس كثيره تتكلم على صبر وشتيره، ومين اللي عمل صبر وشتيره؟ المواد بتوع لبنان ما همش الاسرائيليين عملوها. هي الان احنا بنقول مذبحه صبر وشتيره كان اسرائيل اللي عملها. اسرائيل لم تقم بمذبحه صبر وشتيره.
لا مختلف معاك في موضوع صبر وشتيره. يعني انا مختلف معاك.
مين عمل المذبحه؟
يعني انا مختلف معاكم.
يعني احنا قاعدين نسكت.
يعني الاسرائيليين؟
انا مين قال كده؟ اللي قتلوا الفلسطينيين
يعني يوسف احمد مراسلنا في فلسطين وهو فلسطيني هو كذاب.
بص لا يوجد واحد في العالم يقول ان عمل المذبحه بتاعت شتيره هم الاسرائيليين عملها النهارده وان اسرائيل ساعدوهم بانهم يوروهم المعسكر. ده الكلام اللي هو الفاينل والده اللي اتقال في لجنه التحقيق الدوليه قالت ده نتيجه
يعني سعيد انا بشكرك انه انت بتعرض وجهه نظر اسرائيل.
ان المانيا بين انها ترتبط ان تقدم هذه التعويضات فلا احد يعني يدخل في جدل حوالين لماذا تقدم المانيا هذه التعويضات. المانيا تقدم تعويضات باتفاق مع اسرائيل. اذا كانت المانيا دوله مستقله قد تستطيع ان تقول لا اذا ما كانش عايزه تقدم هذه التعويضات. كلمه ابتزاز الاسرائيليين للالمان او الاوروبيين دي مساله طبيعيه. في عالم السياسه انت بتستخدم كل ادواتك عشان تحقق مصالحك. إذا مسألة إنك أنت بتستخدم دي علشان توصل لأهدافك ده حق أي دولة ولا يعتبر مؤامرة إسرائيلية ولا مؤامرة يهودية. إذا إسرائيل ليست استثناء، الكل يفعل مثل ما تفعل إسرائيل.
طيب يعني أستاذ سعيد دع اليهود إسلام هتلر نهاية حياته يعني حتى بيستخدموا هذا الشيء بأنه بيأصلوا العداء الإسلام. يعني برأيك يعني المعنى هم بيرغبوا بجعل الإسلام هو عدوهم الأساسي والأول.
لا بص يا أخوي هو إسرائيل ما قالوش إن اليهود قالوا حكاية إن هتلر أسلم.
I thought to stop, but I said that everybody is fascinated, so let her finish.
بالذات لحد ما وصل للعالمين في مصر كانت في بعض نفسها ودي مذكور يعني في الكتابات التاريخيه موجوده. هو اللي اشاعوا ان هتلر اسلم يسمى نفسه الحاج محمد هتلر، ده كان احد الخطيب الشعبيه في مصر في فتره من الفترات.
هو القدس ليه؟ ليه عايزينها؟
هقول لك حاجه، الجرائم اللي عملتها حماس.
طب هم ليه عايزين بيت المقدس؟
بس دي واحده ودي صراع احنا لا نقف لنا فيه ولا جمل. بسبب ايه؟ ان هذه المنطقه اللي هي فيها المقدسات الدينيه الثلاثه المسيحيه واليهوديه والاسلاميه، دي مناطق لابد من يحصل فيها توافق. مفيش حد فيه له حق والتاني ملوش. اليهود ليهم حقوق والمسلمين ليهم فيها حقوق والمسيحيين ليهم حقوق ايضا فيها. الحاخام ده كبير حاخامات اسرائيل جه مره هنا في مصر سنه 96 وقال الشيخ ناصر بتاعه وقال له كم مره القدس مذكوره عندك في القران؟ قال له مرة وفعلا القدس مش مذكوره في القران نهائيا. فالشيخ ناصر قال له لا بس كمان المسجد الاقصى مذكور. قال له لو كانت المشكله على المسجد خدوا المسجد. انا بصراحه سياسه اكسب القدس كلها احسن من ان انا ارفع ده جنيه. حماس كان ظهورها كارثه وما زال وجودها كارثه لانها ديانه الصراع.
Well, imagine catastrophe and other things. Okay. So I'm sure you will feel better when you leave after him. There are others as well. Questions? Yes, please.
You began your presentation by giving a definition of anti-Semitism. And basically you mentioned that excluding Israel, everything else is anti-Semitism. There are two new books. One is by Benjamin Epstein, New Anti-Semitism, and the other one is by Nathan Perlmutter, the Real Anti-Semitism. Can you comment about these two other definitions of anti-Semitism?
Well, all definition may be legitimate, but I must admit, I didn't read the books and I don't know. But this is our, should I say, arbitrary definition to take the minimal, which is already huge in number, just that which relates to the Jews anywhere else that has no pretext. I don't want to say justification. Because once you deal with the Israeli element, with the conflict, some would say, okay, you know, they perceive their situation as harmed so much by Zionism and that, so you can understand. But by our definition, you cannot understand in the sense of you cannot justify anything, not even have a pretext. Yes, please.
Yeah, you've presented the problem, but you have not done very much by way of giving us anything to work on in terms of a solution. Obviously, we need more Egyptians like that brave gentleman. How do we support people like that? And the second question is there a class issue? Is there a class element to this kind of racism? Is it primarily ignorant people that buy into it, or is it extensive throughout all different classes, whether they're bourgeois or peasants or whatever?
All classes.
So
that's an easy way.
And my third comment is, I think one place to work would certainly be within academia, because academics don't want to see this stuff. They do not want to see it, because if you show that, you are immediately branded as a racist and an Islamophobe. And whatever's shown there is dismissed as it's about the equivalent of Rush Limbaugh, all right? Nah, it's like Rush Limbaugh, it doesn't really mean anything. So I would say that academics need to be shamed into taking a position where they are prepared to say Islam is fine, but the way these people are interpreting it is disgusting and beyond belief. And I don't think enough academics are aware of this kind of poison.
First of all, I must admit that Memri is not in the business of solutions. But I will say something. Our role is to present what we see, to analyze it, but not to suggest solutions. Once we begin with that, we deal, you know, anti-Semitism is just one of 6 projects of ours. And in none of them we suggest, unlike other research institutes that have recommendations and policy papers, we have none. We limit ourselves to what is there, and it should serve others to suggest. But yes, you're right that once you see this guy, and many others, as I said, many others, you know that this is the road. Of course, education systems in the Arab and Muslim world are the ones that embed these anti-Semitic myths in children's heads. Education systems have to be impacted in some way. Is that a recommendation? I don't know. It's something that the West should follow. UNRWA wanted to enforce the study of the Holocaust. It did not succeed. And the teachers rebelled. The children didn't have.
But not speaking from memory, but you yourself, just as a private individual, do you have any insights? I mean, you've been... The answer is to support liberals and reformists, not to support regimes like Morsi that bring Egypt backward. The answer is to support people like him. I have to tell you a story to stay away from North America. Once, when we had an office in Germany, the foreign office invited us to talk to us. I went. There was Herr Dr. Trautwein, the head of the Near East office, and he asked me, what are you doing? And I explained what we are doing, and then I said, in one area we go beyond just bridging the gap of language, etc. And that is in supporting reformists and liberals. How do we do that? I said we do it by helping them open websites, blogs, and to have their word heard. And so he said to me, in the Arab, so he said to me, but if you do that, you will be destabilizing regimes we have supported for years. I said, of course, if we have one blog or one website, we are not going to destabilize anybody, but this is the notion. And to act today against Morsi, who is the ally, totally mistaken approach of the United States, is to fight against, to destabilize the regime that America is supporting now. This is tough. I'm saying, yes, you have to support liberals and reformists no matter what, even if they are not going to win that round. I'm answering a question that I was asked in private. It doesn't matter. As a moral approach, the answer is to support liberals and reformists, and there are so many. Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what are the critiques that you face coming towards Memri, and what your response is to those critiques.
First of all, critique was much around in the beginning, but we are 15 years after our inception, so there's very little critique, not anymore. In papers, in articles, in media, you wouldn't find much today, almost nothing. And there would be those who would say that we are selective in our choice, talking about those who talk, maybe you picked some lunatic. Anyone who knows who is Qaradawi cannot say that. You know, Qaradawi is the leading spiritual force, so it's all nonsense, and it's not among... the critique is basically you are a Mossad, not to the content. There is nothing to say about the content. So it's around Mossad, some professor in Michigan said this is an operation of $60 million to smear their. Okay, I mean, enough to go to our page of reformists and liberals to see that we show the positive, the liberals and reformists, and for 10, 12 years now. So it's not, we don't face the problem anymore as we used to in the past. We are quoted by the New York Times, by the Washington Post, by CNN. What else do you need?